The morning my husband made me breakfast, I knew something was wrong. Not because the food tasted strange, not because he said anything unkind, but because he was being gentle in a way he had never been before. He stood in the kitchen quietly, moving slower than usual, no phone in his hand, no rushing, just the soft sound of a pan warming and bread toasting. I watched him from the doorway, still in my robe, holding my mug with both hands. He smiled at me like he was trying to memorize my face. That was the moment my heart tightened. For 23 years, I had learned the language of his moods, the way his shoulders sat when he was tired, the way he hummed when he felt peaceful, the silence he carried when something heavy waited inside him. This silence was different. "Sicked," he said gently. "I made your favorite." My favorite? He hadn't made breakfast on a weekday in years. Not because he was cruel, but because life had slowly taught us to move around each other instead of toward each other. I sat, anyway. The plate was warm. Eggs cooked just how I liked them, toast buttered carefully, edge to edge, a small bowl of fruit cut neatly, like it mattered. I thanked him. He nodded, but didn't sit down. He leaned against the counter and watched me eat. That's when the feeling settled in my chest, heavy and sure. This wasn't kindness. This was preparation. People think heartbreak arrives loudly, with shouting, with slammed doors, with tears that fall without warning. But mine arrived quietly, on a clean kitchen table, served with care. I chewed slowly, afraid that if I spoke, something fragile would break. My hands trembled just enough for me to notice. He finally sat across from me. "You don't have to rush," he said. That sentence confirmed it, because when someone tells you not to rush, it usually means time is about to run out. I looked at him then, really looked. The man I built a life with, the man who held my hand in hospital rooms and stood beside me at funerals, the man who had slowly grown distant without either of us naming it. His eyes were kind and full of goodbye. I wanted to ask the question, the one forming at the back of my throat, but I didn't, because somewhere deep inside, I already knew the answer, and once spoken, there would be no pretending left. So I ate the breakfast he made with love, I swallowed the truth rising in my chest, and I let the quiet stretch between us. Some moments change your life forever. Not because of what is said, but because of what is finally understood. My husband's name is Darnell. We met when we were both young enough to believe love could fix anything. Back then, we laughed loudly. We stayed up late talking about dreams we thought would come true just because we wanted them badly enough. Darnell had a calm way about him. He wasn't flashy. He didn't promise the world, but he showed up. When my car broke down, he came. When my mother was sick, he came. When I doubted myself, he sat beside me and let the doubt pass. That was how our marriage worked in the beginning. Quiet support, steady presence. We didn't fight much. We also didn't talk deeply once life got busy. Years passed like pages turning too fast. We raised 2 children together, built routines, paid bills, attended birthdays and funerals and school events. From the outside, we looked solid. People would say things like, "You two are lucky. You make marriage look easy." I always smiled at that, because easy wasn't the word. Comfortable was. And comfort, if you're not careful, slowly turns into distance. I didn't notice when Darnell stopped telling me about his day. I didn't notice when I stopped asking questions that mattered. We talked about groceries, about schedules, about who was picking up who. We didn't talk about feelings. Not because we didn't care, but because silence had become easier than honesty. There were signs, looking back. The way he stayed up later than me, the way he took longer routes home, the way his laughter didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. I felt it too, a quiet loneliness that sat beside me even when the house was full. But I told myself this was marriage. This was life. This is what happens when love matures. I told myself not to be dramatic. I had been taught that. Growing up, I learned early how to keep peace, how to smooth rough edges, how to carry weight without complaining. So when something felt off, I folded it neatly and put it away. Until that morning. Until breakfast. As I sat there, chewing slowly, watching Darnell avoid my eyes, memories drifted in without asking permission. I remembered how he used to reach for my hand in the car, how he used to kiss my forehead just because he passed by, how he used to call me in the middle of the day just to hear my voice. Those things don't disappear overnight. They fade, quietly. And when they're gone, you don't notice right away. Darnell finally spoke. "I took the day off," he said. That surprised me. "You never take days off," I replied. "I know. I thought today would be a good day." "A good day for what?" I didn't ask. Instead, I nodded. He reached across the table and rested his hand near mine. Not on it, just close enough to feel the warmth. "I wanted to do something nice," he said. My heart pressed harder against my ribs, because kindness without reason can feel heavier than anger. We finished eating in silence. Afterward, he washed the dishes slowly, carefully, like he was trying to stretch time. I sat at the table, hands folded, listening to the water run. That's when I noticed something else. His phone buzzed on the counter. He didn't reach for it. That was new. Darnell never ignored his phone. I looked at the screen without meaning to. A name flashed briefly before it went dark. Monique. I didn't know a Monique. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I told myself names didn't mean stories. But my chest tightened anyway. When he turned around, he noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said automatically. The word came out before I could stop it. He nodded, but his eyes searched my face like he knew the truth lived just behind my answer. We moved through the rest of the morning like two people walking on thin ice. Careful, polite, afraid of cracking something that couldn't be fixed. Around noon, he finally sat beside me on the couch. The distance between us felt wider than the room. "I've been thinking a lot," he said. That sentence is never harmless. I waited. "I don't want to hurt you," he continued. My hands grew cold. I had waited for honesty. I didn't expect it to arrive wrapped in gentleness. I looked at him then, really looked, at the familiar face I had memorized over decades, at the man who knew my habits and fears, at the man who was preparing to step away. "Say it," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. He inhaled slowly. "I've been carrying something, and it isn't fair to you anymore." The room felt smaller, the walls closer. I didn't cry, not yet, because when truth approaches, your body sometimes freezes before it breaks. And in that frozen moment, I understood something painful. That breakfast wasn't love trying to reconnect. It was love trying to leave gently. When Darnell said he had been carrying something, I felt my body grow very still. Not stiff, not tense, just quiet. Like everything inside me had stepped back to make room for the truth. I had imagined this moment before, not clearly, just enough to know it would hurt. But I had always pictured shouting, tears, anger spilling out like water from a broken glass. Instead, there was only silence, the kind that presses against your ears. Darnell looked down at his hands. He rubbed his thumb along his ring like it was something unfamiliar. "I didn't plan for this to happen," he said. "It just did." That sentence landed heavy, because nothing important ever just happens. It grows. It feeds on moments, on choices made quietly. I waited for him to continue. He talked slowly, like each word needed permission to exist. "I've been feeling distant for a long time," he said. "I didn't know how to say it without hurting you." I almost smiled at that, because not saying it had still hurt me, just in smaller ways, over longer time. "Who is Monique?" I asked. The name came out steady. His shoulders dropped. That told me everything before he even answered. "She's someone from work," he said. We started talking. At first, it was just conversations. Just conversations. Those words always come first. "When did it stop being just that?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than any confession. "A few months ago," he said quietly. The room didn't spin. My heart didn't race. Instead, a strange calm washed over me, like my body already knew this story and was tired of pretending it didn't. "Did you love her?" I asked. He looked up at me then, eyes glossy but honest. "I don't know," he said. "I know I felt seen." Seen. That word echoed, because I had spent years right beside him, listening, supporting, adjusting myself to fit the shape of our life. And still, he hadn't felt seen. I nodded slowly. "I see," I said. But what I saw wasn't just another woman. I saw all the moments we chose comfort over connection, all the times we avoided hard conversations, all the nights we turned away instead of toward each other. This didn't start with Monique. She was just where it landed. Darnell reached for my hand this time and actually touched it. His palm was warm, familiar. "I never meant to betray you," he said. I gently pulled my hand back. "I know," I replied, and I meant it. That didn't make it hurt less. It just made it quieter. He told me they hadn't been physical yet. I believed him. But betrayal doesn't wait for bodies to meet. It begins when honesty leaves. I asked him why now? Why breakfast? Why today? He swallowed hard. "Because she wants more, and I realized I can't keep pretending everything is fine here." There it was, the choice standing in the room with us. Not spoken outright, but present. I leaned back against the couch and stared at the window. Rain streaked down the glass. I thought about all the mornings I woke up early for him, all the dinners I made even when I was tired, all the times I swallowed words because I thought love meant endurance. "Do you want to leave?" I asked. The question hung between us. "I don't know what I want," he said. That answer hurt in a different way, because after all these years, not knowing felt like knowing. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy, but they held me. "I need some air," I said. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. I stepped onto the porch and breathed deeply. The house behind me felt different. Not unsafe, just unfamiliar. I realized something then. I had spent so long holding our marriage together quietly that I forgot to ask if it was still holding me. Darnell joined me a few minutes later. He didn't touch me. We stood side by side like strangers sharing a bus stop. "I'm sorry," he said. I believed that too. But apologies don't rewind time. They only mark where things broke. That night, we slept in the same bed, but there was a space between us that felt permanent. I stared at the ceiling while he turned away, and for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder how to fix us. I wondered who I was without trying. Because sometimes the rising conflict isn't loud. Sometimes it's the slow realization that love has been surviving on memory, not presence. The morning after felt heavier than the night before. Not because anything new had happened, but because nothing had been undone. I woke up before Darnell. The room was dim, gray light slipping through the curtains. I lay there, listening to his breathing, the same rhythm I had fallen asleep to for years. Only now it felt like a stranger's sound. I slipped out of bed quietly and walked to the kitchen. The breakfast dishes were still on the counter, the plates he had used, the pan he had wiped too carefully. That sweet effort now felt like a goodbye dressed up as kindness. I made myself tea and sat at the table alone. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I would be shaking by now. But grief doesn't always rush in. Sometimes it waits. Darnell came in a few minutes later. He looked tired, older. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied. We sat across from each other like we were in a meeting. No touching, no small talk. "I called in sick today," he said. I nodded. "I need to figure things out." That sentence again, figure things out. It had been my job for so long to hold space while he figured things out. I realized I was tired of being patient with uncertainty. "Darnell," I said gently, "I need to ask you something." He looked up. "Are you staying here because you love me?" I continued, "or because you're afraid of leaving?" He didn't answer right away. That silence told me more than words ever could. "I care about you," he said finally, "deeply." That wasn't what I asked. "I know you do, but caring isn't the same as choosing." His eyes filled. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said again. I reached across the table, not to comfort him, but to steady the moment. "I believe that," I said, "but you still did." The truth sat between us like a third person, quiet, unmovable. "I think you should go stay somewhere else for a while," I said. The word surprised both of us, even me. He looked shocked. "Are you asking me to leave?" he asked. "No," I said calmly. "I'm telling you what I need." That was new for me, needing something and saying it out loud. "I need space. I need to hear my own thoughts without wondering what you're hiding." He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said, but his voice cracked. That afternoon, he packed a small bag. Not everything, just enough. I watched from the doorway as he folded his clothes. I noticed how careful he was, like he was afraid of breaking something fragile. Maybe he was. Before he left, he stood in front of me. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "I do," I replied. He looked at me confused. "I focus on myself," I said, "for the first time in a long time." He hugged me then. It was brief, respectful, and it felt like closure beginning. When the door closed behind him, the house went silent. Not empty, just honest. I walked through the room slowly. The couch where we watched movies, the hallway where we argued quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear, the bedroom where love had slowly turned into routine. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself cry. Not loudly, just enough to release what I had been holding for years. I wasn't crying because he might choose someone else. I was crying because I had almost chosen to disappear for him. That night, I slept alone. And for the first time, I didn't feel lonely. I felt clear. Clear that love should not feel like waiting to be chosen. Clear that kindness should not come with secrets. Clear that I deserved honesty, even when it hurt. The next morning, I opened the curtains wide. Sunlight filled the room. I made coffee. I played music I liked, not music we liked. That mattered. I didn't know if Darnell would come back. I didn't know if the marriage would survive. But I knew something important had already changed. I was no longer begging for truth. I had claimed it. The days after Darnell left did not fall apart the way I expected. They unfolded quietly. No dramatic phone calls, no late-night messages begging to come back. Just space. At first, the silence felt strange, like standing in a room after the music stops. But slowly, that silence became something else. It became room to breathe. I started waking up without that tight feeling in my chest. The one that had lived there so long, I thought it was normal. I made breakfast for myself. Simple things. Toast, eggs, coffee. And for the first time in years, I ate without wondering if someone else was unhappy. I noticed small things again. The sound of birds in the morning, the way sunlight moved across the kitchen floor, how calm the house felt when it was just me inside it. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had been shrinking. Darnell called 3 days later. I let it ring once before answering. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied. There was no anger in my voice, no fear either. "I've been thinking a lot," he said. "I'm sure you have," I answered. He told me he was staying with his brother, that he had started talking to someone about his confusion. "I should have done that a long time ago," he admitted. I listened, but I didn't rush to reassure him. I didn't tell him it was okay, because it wasn't. "I'm trying to understand why I pulled away," he said. "Why I stayed when I wasn't fully present." I took a slow breath. Understanding yourself is important, but so is understanding what it cost me. There was a pause. "I know," he said softly. "I see that now." After we hung up, I sat on the couch and let the moment settle. I wasn't waiting for him to fix things anymore. That was the difference. Over the next few weeks, I began doing things just for me. I took long walks without my phone. I visited a small bookstore across town. I cooked meals I liked, even if no one else did. I called friends I hadn't spoken to in years, not to complain, just to reconnect. One afternoon, I found myself laughing out loud at something silly on television. The sound startled me. I realized I hadn't laughed freely in a long time. Darnell and I met again after a month. We chose a quiet cafe, neutral ground. He looked nervous, hopeful. I felt steady. "I miss you," he said. "I know," I replied. "But missing someone isn't enough." He nodded. "I want to come home, but only if it's honest." I looked at him for a long moment. "I don't know yet," I said truthfully, and that answer has to be okay. It was the first time I had not rushed to save the relationship, and that mattered more than I expected. We agreed to take things slowly, to keep talking, to keep space. Not as punishment, but as respect. That night, back at home, I stood in the doorway and looked around. This house had held so many versions of me. The woman who waited, the woman who hoped, the woman who doubted herself, and now the woman who trusted her own heart. I realized something important then. That breakfast he made wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was how long I ignored my own voice. The bad feeling I had that morning was not fear, it was wisdom. Love doesn't always leave loudly. Sometimes it tries to soften the goodbye. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is listen to the quiet warning inside you before it costs you yourself. I don't know exactly how my story with Darnell will end, but I know how my story with me has begun. With honesty, with boundaries, with peace. And that feels like a kind of love I should have chosen long ago.